You're watching our special broadcast on the eve of the US presidential election as the curtains come down on what has been a very volatile campaign season. All eyes are on the 7 swing states. These states account for 93 electoral college votes and hold the key to the White House. On your screens, we have for you the state's success rate for the last 10 presidential elections. So, for example, Nevada has voted for a candidate who went on to win the presidential elections 9 out of the last 10 times. Michigan has voted for a winning candidate 8 out of 10 times. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris has grabbed an unexpected lead in an Iowa poll. The poll conducted by Selzer and Company gives Harris a 3 percentage point lead over Trump. This would come as a jolt for the Republicans as Iowa had voted for Trump in the last 2 elections. It also has a success rate of 70% in the last 10 presidential elections. I'm now joined by public opinion pollster Jay-Ann Selzer. She's also the president of Selzer and Company, which carried out the poll. Anne, thank you so much for joining us. You're one of the most respected pollsters in the United States. But today, the poll that you have for Iowa is being questioned, of course, by the Trump camp. They have said they have completely rubbished it. And many of the fence sitters are also a little surprised. The Democrats, of course, welcome it. What's really giving you confidence today to go out and say that, yes, Kamala Harris has a 3-point lead over Donald Trump in the crucial state of Iowa?
Well, you're expressing greater confidence than I feel. This, of course, was a shock to see Kamala Harris leading Donald Trump. Donald Trump won Iowa the last 2 elections. So shock doesn't even quite do it justice, and confidence would be overstating the case. And as far as my reputation, let's hope it's intact after Election Day. I take the best shot I can with my polling methods to reveal the truth. There's nothing more I can think of that I could do that would be helpful in understanding this.
Right. Could you explain us the methodology and what really caused this tectonic shift, so to say? Who are the large voting groups who are now backing Kamala Harris, according to you?
Yeah, my methodology I call polling forward. That is, I first take I gather together a cross-section of the entire state of Iowa, and I balance that to the census. Those are known population parameters. And then I extract from that larger pool, over 1,000 people, the 808 who qualify as a likely voter. And that is, they say they've already voted, or they say they will definitely vote. If they say they'll probably vote, that's not strong enough for me. So it's a pretty rigid screen. And what a lot of other polling firms is to take into account things that happened in the past. So I call that polling backward, that they'll look at exit poll numbers, they'll look at the demographics of the way things worked before, and then apply them to the current campaign. I think that's polling backwards, and I think that to me, that has some hazards that go with it. What's happening in this poll, we saw it in September with a giant surge for Kamala Harris. She didn't surpass Trump, but she closed an 18-point edge that Trump had over Joe Biden to just 4 points. So this was sort of in the cards, and what we saw happening is that more people were qualifying to be as likely voters. Not that they had voted already in September, but that they said they would definitely vote. And the demographics of those people who were saying in bigger numbers they would definitely vote were women, were younger voters, were people with a college education. In short, demographics that aligned with Kamala Harris. So it isn't that our data do not say that people moved from Trump to Harris. More people got in the game, and they tended to be Harris voters.
All right. So you're saying the younger voters, new voters, independent, undecided ones are probably backing Kamala Harris in a big way?
Well, we still have some undecided people in our poll. You see, neither one of the candidates gets to 50%. So there's some wiggle room here for things to change up. We've got 3% who say they're voting for Robert Kennedy Jr. He's on our ballot. They could shift and go a different way. We've got 1% saying they'd vote for somebody else. We've got some people who say they still haven't made up their minds. And we've got some people who say they've already voted And for either they don't remember who they voted for, or they just don't want to tell us. So there's enough room, there are enough percentage points there that this could all change when they start counting the votes on election night. But the things that I think are terribly important to know is that her Kamala Harris's margin among women aged 65 and over is more than 2-1. She gets more than 60% among that group. And that is the group that has the strongest turnout as we measure it in our poll. Like 93, 94% of the people we talk to in that age and sex group say they will definitely vote or have already voted. And independent
Right.
women have shifted. In earlier polls this year, they were voting in majorities for Donald Trump, and now they're in majorities for Kamala Harris. So one of the things driving this, we speculate, is that the abortion ban went into effect in July. So our June poll that had Donald Trump with a big lead shrank and then shrank again, actually with Kamala Harris leapfrogging over him into first place. One of the things that we know, two things. We know that a majority of Iowans think that all or most abortions should be legal. We know that the congressional race, we have 4 congressional districts, all of them held by Republicans. In the first district, which has been an intense race about abortion, the Democratic challenger is leading by 20
Right.
points. So it suggests
Right.
to us that abortion is a big issue here.
Abortion is a big issue. And in fact, it was a very big issue for Indian Americans as well, if we saw the survey conducted by the Carnegie Endowment Center. But do these numbers give you confidence that Iowa will be a bellwether? It is reflecting the national mood and the mood in all the 7 swing states?
You are never going to have me say I'm confident. There's always things I can imagine that can happen. This particular election cycle, we have had a series of dramatic things happen that can change the race. And when people say, well, what's going to happen? I go, well, what's going to happen this afternoon? Because there are still things that can happen that can change the race.
Right. And how do you see the reaction of Donald Trump to the Iowa poll?
Well, I understand. I haven't seen it directly that he said some things about me that were not very complimentary, that I'm a Trump hater. He didn't call me a Trump lover in 2020 when our poll, same methodology, showed
But he
him
praised
leading.
you at that time.
Exactly. So this is common that when candidates don't like the poll, then they denigrate the pollster. And I've been in this chair before, so I'm not rattled.
All right. So let me just ask you, where do you think Kamala Harris stands right now? Do you think, and this is just a personal view based on the numbers that we're getting, yes, she has a 1-point lead nationally, but do you think she will be able to garner enough votes to reach the magic number of 270?
You know, there are plenty of people out there who do that for a living, is try to get to 270 every which way. That Iowa now might be contributing its 6 electoral votes. You can see that's the same number Nevada has. So that could be offsetting some changes from the way things are polling now. I'm just not a predictor. I have a crystal ball collection, but I don't use it for work.
All right. The significance of Iowa compared to Pennsylvania right now, because all eyes are on Pennsylvania.
Agreed. And I think the reason is it's so close. The polls have been going back and forth and back and forth. And they've got a lot of electoral votes to contribute. So winning there is kind of a jackpot among the swing states that are outstanding there. And Pennsylvania is particularly interesting, as people have said, that it's, you know, Pittsburgh on the western border, Philadelphia on the eastern border, and then in the middle of the state, Alabama. Now, my sister just moved away from State College, Pennsylvania, which is where Penn State is. And that's not exactly Alabama, but most of the rest of the state is rural, much like Iowa. And so we'll see how this all balances out. And really, the Philadelphia suburbs are key. They're very swingy, and just depends on what the turnout is there, how many women turn out there. I'm eager for election night to see how the end of the story, how all of these possible endings turn out.
Right. But do you feel that the women voters in America will be deciding this election?
There's a case certainly in Iowa for that. Kamala Harris is winning by 20 points among women. Donald Trump is winning by 14 points among men. And other pollsters who work with candidates and with campaigns have said, you know, if you're a Democratic candidate, you need to win with women more than you lose with men. And that's exactly the state of the game right here in Iowa.
Right. And finally, what do you think has contributed to the decline in numbers in Iowa for Donald Trump?
I think the abortion issue is big. I think he is running a negative campaign, you know, compared to Kamala Harris, who's e pluribus unum, our national motto, out of many, one. And he is divisive. And, you know, it may be, this is speculation and just what I observe, that they've had enough of that. Again, this is observational. I'm seeing very few Trump yard signs. And 4 years ago, they were plentiful. You saw them everywhere. And it doesn't mean that there are necessarily households that used to vote for Trump but aren't now. But it does mean that there's visibly an advantage, at least, you know, the roads I travel on, for Kamala Harris. I did see one interesting yard sign that was Mitt Romney 2024. Not on the ballot.
Right. Okay. And finally, how do you respond to all that criticism, enthusiasm, praise for your poll on social media? There's been lots on it over the last 24 hours or so.
You know, this is probably the biggest poll drop in my lifetime. There was a caucus poll back in 2008 that got a lot of attention, but this is by far the poll heard around the world. And that's, you know, that's some pressure. That's some anxiety for me. I like my polls to be right, no matter who it is. And we'll see what happens. I'm not terribly bothered by the criticisms because most of the people are saying things like, I've been bought. I said, well, I have clients who have paid for my work, but I don't really understand the mechanism where I would be paid to deliver data that I manipulated in some way. I don't even know how that would begin to work. So I'm not bothered by that. And the praise, may it be true.
All right. All the best to you, Ann Selzer. And let's hope your poll comes out to be true as well. It'll all be clear in the next 24 to 48 hours. We have to take a short break at this point, but on the other side, Trump and Harris are heading towards a photo finish in the race to the White House. Foreign policy has been a hallmark of the presidential election campaigning. A special conversation with Lisa Curtis up next.